This week, the government will release another review of the troubled F-35 program, and the Conservatives have already leaked the results. The cost will be pegged at just more than $45 billion over the next 40 years. We also know the government will open the door to other contenders, meaning that the F-35s are not dead yet, but certainly they're in a lot of trouble. How did we get here? Here is your weekly West Block Primer. When Defense Minister Peter MacKay leapt into a mock cockpit of the F-35 for a photo op back in 2010, he said this was the right plane for the right price. Well, it turns out it could be neither. The government insisted that the cost of buying and maintaining a fleet of 65 of these planes would be $14.7 billion. It even fought the 2011 election campaign on that price, claiming that it was a bargain. But not everyone was buying that. In 2011, the Parliamentary Budget Officer peered into the plane, kicked the tires, and came up with a price tag of almost $30 billion over a 30-year period. The government snorted that Kevin Page didn't know what he was talking about. Well, then the Auditor General decided to have a look, and he found that the government had a different set of numbers that put the price at $25 billion over 20 years. The government knew it was knee-deep in something, and so it handed the whole purchase to another minister who ordered another audit, this time by KPMG. Government sources tell us that the price tag will be just more than a whopping $45 billion. That's over a 40-year period, which KPMG says is the right time frame to look at. It's a far cry from the door crasher special of $14.7 billion. Well, joining me now is Alan Williams, the former Assistant Deputy Minister of National Defence in charge of procurement and material. Mr. Williams, thanks very much for being here.
Pleasure being
Back in 2002, you were the one who signed Canada into the second phase of the F-35 program. With what you know now, is the F-35 dead?
I would hope not. Frankly, it may turn out to be the right aircraft for Canada. My concern has always been that to sole source it to the F-35 before it's operational without knowing the price made no sense, neither for the military nor for the Canadian taxpayers.
Now, are you surprised at all that the numbers coming out from KPMG, we're told by a very senior government source that that number is going to be somewhere between $45 billion and $50 billion if you cost it over 40 years? Sticker shock is the word that comes to mind for a lot of people. Does it to you?
No. In fact, back in May, I wrote an article where I estimated the cost between, I think, 41.7 and 47.6, something of that sort. So
that's pretty bang on.
It's pretty bang on. And frankly, I don't think the government's surprised by it either. I mean, they're not naive. These numbers all come from the same source, the Pentagon's annual selected acquisition report with costs. And so anybody doing any kind of research would have come up to the same conclusion that the price to the total cost to buy, maintain, and operate for roughly 30 years isn't that order of magnitude. So I don't think they're surprised by that either.
The other thing that we have been told is that the statement of requirements, that sort of Bible of what a manufacturer has to meet in order to sell this plane to the Canadian government, is going to be changed. And the key thing that's going to be changed there is stealth. The requirement for stealth is now not part of the statement of requirements. Given that, does that open up the door to all sorts of other contenders?
Well, it certainly does. But I would hope that the notion that it's off the table isn't accurate either. I mean, what we should be doing, instead of saying that stealth is a mandatory feature, we should be making it what we call a rated feature. So the more, quote, stealthiness you have, the better product you can provide us, the more points we will give you, the better your technical bid, the better chance that you have to win a competition, given the price and everything else. So stealthiness is probably still a highly desirable factor to have, but it shouldn't be a pass-fail, because then you know that you've restricted it to the one potential aircraft, although even today, if you were to map the F-35 against the existing statement of requirements, it would fail. It would fail because the statement of requirements was written in anticipation of some of the technical developments which so far have not proven to be achievable. So it too would fail today against the current statement of requirements regarding stealth.
From what you know, are there other planes out there now, fighter jets out there now, that would meet our needs other than the F-35?
Well, again, a question of how you define our needs. Certainly, I think most people are familiar with the the handful of products out there, whether it's the Super Hornet or the Typhoon or the Gripen or the Rafale. These are all jet aircraft used by a lot of our allies in a lot of situations. They each have pros and cons and benefits, and they each have different associated costs with it. And that's why right from the beginning, all that I have said is, let's go through the front door on this process. Let's do an open and fair statement of requirements. Let's put it out to industry. Let's get all the bids in. Let's evaluate them fairly and pick the one that has the best combination of technical and price to meet our needs, however they're defined.
A lot of people, including you, saying that maybe should have been done at the beginning rather than at the
How
end.
long it should have been done? It should have been done 2 years ago, or 18 months ago, or 12 months ago, or 6 months ago. But now's okay, too. You know, if we do it today, that's better than not doing it today. And I think that would be great. Within 2 years, we can have selected whichever aircraft we want. And then we go ahead and, depending on which one it is, move forward.
Okay, so the process going ahead is that there is a committee of 4 people who are going to look at options that are out there and then report back to the government. Is that a step forward that we're now taking a look at these other aircraft?
To me, that's a red herring. I mean, you can look, everybody knows, in essence, the kind of information through an options analysis. The problem with an options analysis, it gives you kind of a perspective on what's out there. You can get a lot of that through the internet. You can get a lot of that by going to the companies. But what you can't get is the top sensitive secret data that they only could submit through a competitive process. So frankly, it's useful information, but it's not anywhere close to the kind of rigor you need in order to assess which one is best. And of course, you have to map that against your criteria, your statement of requirements, and how much weight you give for each kind of capability that you require. And you have to be careful, because even when you open up the statement of requirements and no longer make stealth a mandatory, again, you can still manipulate the process by how much weight you provide to each kind of component.
Final question is this, that if we're looking at a price tag over 40 years of between $45 and $50 billion for the F-35, would any of these other competitors be substantially cheaper than that? Or are we just going to have to learn to live with this price tag?
If you talk to them, they'll probably say they can do it a lot cheaper. And my answer is, prove it. Let's have a competition. Provide your technical specs, provide your price, sharpen your pencils, and that's how we will get the best deal.
Alan Williams, thanks very much for being here. Appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Well, we also asked our favorite debaters, Senator George Baker and Professor Ian Lee, to weigh in on all of this, and here's just a bit of what they had to say.
Big ticket procurement is very complex, very difficult, very challenging, and it confuses the best minds. I mean, some are using 20-year estimates, some are using 30, some are using 40, some are using just the capital cost, some are saying, no, you got to throw in the gasoline, you know, and you got to throw in the repair bill. And there's where a lot of the confusion is coming to Canadians. When I go and buy a car, I buy a Honda Civic for $20,000, I don't have to factor in, you know, the gas and the insurance and the depreciation, but some of the opposition people in your party are confusing Canadians by throwing in all these numbers to confuse them when it's $1 billion a year all in to protect our country with an Air Force. That's a bargain when you consider we're the second largest country on the planet Earth, occupying 25% of the northern hemisphere.
You're forgetting that this was this plane and no other plane. This was untendered. There was no tender call for this. You know, we had the associate minister of national defense claimed, we're going to go ahead with this deal. We're not going to back down. We are on a crusade. Those were his words immediately after the announcement in the first place. And then the Prime Minister turned around and said, on the record, to cancel this project would be irresponsible.